Hi and welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, my name's Lee. I operate this channel with my son Ollie and we bring you varied content including tech, food and travel and opinion pieces and geopolitics. We're based here in Shenzhen, China. We will soon be leaving China for a while to travel back to the UK, and then we are preparing to travel around Southeast Asia for some time. So there'll be plenty of travel videos coming in the not too distant future. And in today's video, I want to talk about the USA and China and how the USA is trying to stop China's development and China's economic rise through trying to wage war against China using Taiwan as a proxy. And what I'm going to show you, I'm going to demonstrate to you how I believe they are doing this. So without further ado, let's get into the video and get started. So the first thing is, before I get onto Taiwan, I just want to talk a little bit about Russia, Ukraine and the USA. Now, I believe it's been the US's aim for many years to stop the closer integration of Europe with Russia. And they've now achieved that goal through waging war against Russia using Ukraine as a proxy. They initiated a regime change in Ukraine back in 2014. And ever since then, they have pumped billions of dollars into Ukraine. They've trained Ukraine's military. They've supplied huge amounts of weapons to Ukraine. And over the last few months since the invasion of Russia into Ukraine, you can see the amount of money that the US have continued to pump in and the amount of weapons they have sent to the theatre of operation in Ukraine. Now, if you don't believe me that they're fighting a proxy war, just have a listen to these couple of clips. One is from a news anchor and the second one is from a senator.
Chuck, good morning. It's good to see you. So Speaker Pelosi, the highest ranking politician from the United States now to visit Ukraine. We had the secretaries of state and defense last week, Angelina Jolie, even in the country. Right. What does this new package of $33 billion proposed by the president go along with all these visits and the rhetoric, by the way, from the Secretary of Defense that the United States wants to weaken the Russian military? What does all that show you?
Well, when he said that, I could argue now we have put our money where Secretary Austin's mouth went. Because put all this together, Willie, we are now close to $50 billion in total support for this war in Ukraine. That is the equivalent amount. We spent about $50 billion in each of the last 4 years of the war in Afghanistan. So think about this. We're spending $50 billion on a war we haven't fired a shot in yet. I think it shows you that And notice the United States isn't pushing back on the rhetoric. The Russians are going, hey, the U.S. is fighting a proxy war against us. I think the answer is yes, we are. And the Speaker of the House is there to send the word that we're joined at the hip with Ukraine. And the Secretary of State and the Secretary of Defense. I think this is another step in our commitment that we're in for the long haul. And, you know, we still have a line here that the administration hasn't crossed yet, which is saying that Ukraine must win this war, right? They certainly believe that Russia needs to be strategically defeated. That has been the phrase that you've heard used. But it feels like to me now we've gotten so much closer, we're so much joined at the hip now, that there really is, I wouldn't use the word strategic anymore. We seem to be now decided that, look, our policy is Ukraine has to win, and we're going to do whatever it takes to do it.
Over on Fox News, Democratic Congressman Seth Moulton said the quiet part out loud that we're not just at war to support Ukraine, but to beat Russia in a proxy war. Let's watch.
I only have 10 seconds left for each of you, if you could. But if they wrap this in the Senate with a Ukraine funding and a COVID funding, you guys okay with that, Congressman Moulton?
Look, I'm going to support it because it's the right thing to do for Ukraine. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of politics involved, and there will be domestic debates here at home about other policies and whatnot. But at the end of the day, we've got to realize we're at war. And we're not just at war to support the Ukrainians. We're fundamentally at war, although it's somewhat through a proxy, with Russia, and it's important that we win.
And then we also have a tweet from another senator, Dan Crenshaw. And that tweet, he was involved in a Twitter conversation with some other people, and he went on to say, yeah, because investing in the destruction of our adversary's military without losing a single American troop strikes me as a good idea. You should feel the same. And those two clips, together with the tweet, goes to show you that America are in fact fighting a proxy war with Russia using Ukraine. And I believe that they don't really care too much about the Ukrainians. Their ultimate goal is to weaken Russia. They've already succeeded in cutting Russia off from Europe. You see all the sanctions that have been levied against Russia. And their aim, as Biden even said himself, was to remove Putin as the leader of Russia. So how does this relate to the USA and China and Taiwan? So let's have a look at a clip from the speech Antony Blinken gave in the last week or so regarding America's strategy on China.
Even as President Putin's war continues, we will remain focused on the most serious long-term challenge to the international order, and that's posed by the People's Republic of China. China is the only country with both the intent to reshape the international order and, increasingly, the economic, diplomatic, military, and technological power to do it.
Now, as you can see from that clip, he said the most serious long-term challenge to the international order, and that's posed by the People's Republic of China. Now, let me translate that for you, what he really means. He really means that China are the largest threat to the US's rules and the world hegemony of the USA. And we can't have a challenger to that. And we believe that over the next few years, China is going to be that challenger. China's economy is destined to be bigger than the USA, and ultimately their military will be larger than the USA. So we need to stop them at all costs. Now, I believe that one of the ways that they want to do that is by imposing sanctions, which you see they're already doing. But failing that, I think they're going to go one step further, and I think they will try to wage war against China. But they can't attack China directly. They need a proxy, and I believe that proxy is Taiwan. And I'm now going to show you why I believe that is the case. So I want to go to this document that was produced by the RAND Corporation. And this is a policy think tank in America. This report was paid for by the US government, and it was produced for the US military. And the report is titled War with China, Thinking the Unthinkable. And it's quite a long report, but I will leave a link in the description so you can read it all if you wish. But I'm just going to take a few excerpts from this report to show you the possible way that the USA are thinking about China. So early on in the report, it says war between the United States and China could be so ruinous for both countries, for East Asia and for the world, that it might seem unthinkable. Yet it is not. And this goes to show that, you know, even though America know that it will be very destructive, they are still considering it as an option to keep China from developing. And you'll see the reasons for that when I get to a bit later in the report. So the report then continues, we postulate that a war will be regional and conventional. It will be waged mainly by ships on and beneath the sea, by aircraft and missiles of many sorts, and in space against satellites and cyberspace. against computer systems, we assume that fighting would start and remain in East Asia, where potential Sino-US flashpoints and nearly all Chinese forces are located. And this is basically saying that the US don't have such a problem fighting a war because it won't be on their territory. You know, the South China Sea, which is where they see most of the fighting would take place, you know, based off US aircraft carriers and US submarines. It's thousands and thousands of miles away from the US. So all the problems it would create would be in the South China Sea and around that area. And what they're admitting there is that, you know, unlike the US, who has military bases all around the globe, 900 plus, that China doesn't. All China's military is based around the Chinese mainland and the South China Sea. The prospect of a military standoff means that the war could eventually be decided by non-military factors. These should favour the United States now and in the future. Although war would harm both economies, damage to China's could be catastrophic and lasting, on the order of a 25 to 35% reduction in Chinese gross domestic product in a year-long war, compared with a reduction in US GDP on the order of 5 to 10%. Even a mild conflict, unless ended promptly, could weaken China's economy. A long and severe war could ravage China's economy, stall its hard-earned development and cause widespread hardship and dislocation. Now, this is basically saying that although the US know that it will harm their economy, it will also harm the economies of many countries, but the US care little about that as long as it achieves the US's goals. What they're saying is that although they know it will affect their economy, it will only affect their GDP by 5 to 10%, and they believe they could quickly recover from that. Whereas on the other hand, they estimate that it would affect China's economy by 25 to 30% of GDP, and it would take China many, many years to recover from that, hence allowing America to retain its hegemony for many more years. And this is a price that it seems America are willing to pay to maintain their hegemony over China. And then it continues, such economic damage could in turn aggravate political turmoil and embolden separatists in China. Although the regime and its security forces presumably could withstand such challenges, doing so might necessitate increased oppressiveness, tax the capacity and undermine the legitimacy of the Chinese regime in the midst of a very difficult war. What the report is suggesting there is because people will feel hardship and be displaced, they think it will cause unrest within the Chinese society, and that you might start getting separatism occur, and that separatism may then start to undermine the legitimacy of the Chinese government, and hence action regime change, which is something also that the US would like to see happen in China. Now, in Antony Blinken's recent speech, which I'll link to in the description if you want to watch it all, he says that the US does not seek confrontation or conflict with China, but I'm very much a believer in that actions speak louder than words. Now, if you listen to Antony Blinken's speech, which I will link to in the description, Antony Blinken actually says that the US does not seek conflict with China. However, I'm very much a believer in actions speak louder than words. So let's have a look at some examples. So first of all, it was announced not too long ago that the US intending to spend $27.4 billion to install a network of precision guided missiles along the first island chain, which includes Taiwan. However, recent news has suggested that no Southeast nations really are very keen on hosting these missile sites. Then not so long ago, you had Mike Pompeo visiting Taiwan. He was paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to make a speech there. And during his visit there, he made this tweet to the world. It is my view that the US government should immediately take necessary and long overdue steps to do the right and obvious thing. That is to offer the Republic of China, Taiwan, America's diplomatic recognition as a free and sovereign country. Now this flies totally in the face of the one China policy that America have adhered to for many, many years. Now, many will say that Mike Pompeo is no longer a politician. However, he will be a possible front runner for the presidency in the 2024 elections in the USA. So if he has this kind of thinking and he's saying these things and he becomes president, who knows what could happen. We then move on to that. Since the Ukraine war and the Americans have seen how the fighting has gone between the Ukrainian soldiers and the Russian soldiers, they're now trying to pressure Taiwan into buying different types of weapons from the USA, weapons that will be more suited to fighting the Chinese army. Again, another actions speak louder than words. And very, very recently you had Joe Biden even admitting that he would be prepared to intervene militarily if China invaded Taiwan. And it seems that nowadays Biden seems to be very adept at saying the quiet part out loud. Of course, his comment was quickly tried to be backpedaled by the White House and the State Department. So those are the facts of the situation. Now, in conclusion, I feel that to retain their hegemony, the US will go to any lengths, and that is the worrying thing. To me, it seems that the US continually antagonizing China. They're sailing their warships in the South China Sea. They're talking about putting these missile bases. Of course, America say they're defensive, but in fact, really they're offensive. And it's also interesting to note that you have the US who say China are becoming more aggressive. It's interesting to note that China haven't fired a bullet or dropped a bomb on other nations in over 40 years. That contrasts massively with the US's record. I think it's not in anybody's interest for a conflict to start, especially not Taiwan's. Taiwan do a majority, a massive proportion of their trade with the Chinese mainland, and vice versa, far more than they do with the United States of America. Most, if not all, of the other countries in the Southeast Asian region do a bulk of their trade with China. So again, it's not in their interest for a conflict to start, but it really depends on how desperate to retain their hegemony the US become. I see that the US continually provoke China over the Taiwan issue, and I really hope that China do not take their bait. However, if China's red lines are firmly crossed, then I see no alternative but a conflict will break out. I'm hoping and praying that doesn't happen, but it is something that could possibly happen if the US continue down the path that they're taking. I'd really like to know what your thoughts are, and let me know down in the comments. Let's get some discussion going. It is a very divisive issue. There are many on both sides of the fence, but I strongly believe that nobody wants conflict. I hope you did find this video interesting. I'd like to thank everybody who supports us, either by sharing our videos, by donating on PayPal, by donating on Patreon, by buying us a coffee, by giving us donations. It helps us continue to bring this type of content. And as I said at the beginning of the video, it won't be long before we start producing some more travel and sort of more entertainment style content on the channel. But as always, for now, take care.